I heard it is not good to listen to nasheed songs or Islamic songs with only drums, but if the ones who sing it have positive messages and they follow the sunnah, if they follow the sunnah, they wouldn't be singing nasheed. Should it not be considered equal or normal to songs made by non-Muslims? I don't know. Should it not be considered equal as normal to songs made by non-Muslims? Hold on one second. And she's saying it shouldn't be considered to be equal or normal to songs made by non-Muslims. There's a beautiful statement by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala in his fatwa. He mentions that the person who develops within themselves a love of certain things that have no basis in the sunnah, that they'll find that those things that are from the sunnah that they should be involved in, that they will start to dislike those things or not have the same amount of love for those things. He said, for example, there are some people who visit what they call mashahid, the shrines or masajid built over graves. He said these people, they find more pleasure in visiting these graves than going to the Kaaba. To the point that some of them in Senegal and Touba, and they have a belief that if the sheikh of their village or whatever, if he makes the hajj, that the hajj is fardun kifaya. Some of them, they say this, and not all of them. They say that the hajj, it's a community obligation, and so they don't have to make the hajj because somebody else in their community already made the hajj. But every year they come in the millions to the grave of Mamadou Bamba. Right? And they make a prayer facing the Atlantic Ocean because they say that's where Mamadou Bamba, that's where they said that he made a salat on a prayer rug that was on top of the water. Right? Said that he was in chains and he slipped out of his chains. Said he was a wali, he was a saint or whatever. And he slipped out of his chains and he made a prayer on the water. And so they have this innovative prayer that they do. You see the people, they go to the grave of Fatima, they go to the grave of Badawi, they go to these. The point is that they find more pleasure in these innovative acts than they do in what is from the religion. Likewise, he said people who listen to what are now called nasheed. In those days they were called something else, but now these days are called nasheed. He said these same people, they don't find that amount of pleasure that they find from listening to nasheed. They don't find that same amount of pleasure in listening to the Quran or listening to the ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the religion, it becomes entertainment to them. And that's why Shaykh Uthaymeen and others, they said that the nasheed are like the hymns of the Christians, the songs in the churches that are sung by the Christians. And there's no basis in Islam for them. And for this reason, the ulama of our time, they have said that al-anasheed, and that are called al-Islamiyya, that are called Islamic nasheed, that they are not permissible. So, can we listen to nasheed that are Allah's names? This is like almost like the This reminds me rather of a question that I was asked, by some people in my city, and they wanted to know what was wrong with Islamic rap. And I said, well, you might as well be a regular rapper, because if you're a regular rapper, you're a fasiq. But if you're an Islamic rapper, you're a mubtadi'. You're an innovator. And an innovator is worse than a sinful person. Because the person who is sinning, he knows that what he's doing is wrong. While the person who's doing the innovation, he thinks that he's doing something good and benefiting the people and getting close to Allah by what he's doing. So, one second. So the question says, can we listen to the nasheed that are Allah's names? So you have a nasheed. I don't listen to nasheed, but I've heard a nasheed that was similar to that on one occasion. It was just Allah, Allah, like that. What's the point? Why? Why you want to listen to a nasheed that's, mentioning the names of Allah, so on and so forth. You could just make dhikr. The ulama, when they weren't teaching and busy with their classes and so on and so forth, they always make dhikr. Always remembering Allah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Kalimatan khafifatani ala lisan, thaqilatani fil mizan, habibatani ila rahman, subhanallah wa bihamdihi, wa subhanallah al-azim. There are two statements that you can say that are light on the tongue, heavy in your scales on the day of judgment, and love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful. To say subhanallah wa bihamdihi, wa subhanallah al-azim. So you could send salat and salam on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There are many things that a person can do. And why sit around and listen to Nasheed, mentioning Allah's names over and over again, or anything else? If a person wants to soften their heart, can you soften their heart? Can you soften your heart with something that the companions never softened their hearts with? You're going to make your heart softer than the hearts of the companions? You have a way that's better than their way? What they did, it wasn't enough to soften your heart? I mean, that's silly, right? Okay, go ahead. The difference between poetry and nasheed is very clear. Huh? But you want me to recite some poetry and then recite some nasheed so you can see a difference? Poetry, particularly Arab poetry, mandhumat and qasa'id and so on and so forth, they have awzan, they have any different ways that they put together, right? And that are very distinct from nasheed. And nasheed is usually melodious, so on and so forth. It's much different. It doesn't have any style from the known styles of the Arab. And that's how we know, because they don't have the styles of the Arab poetry, and the Arabs have a rich history of poetry, right? That this was something that was innovated. And that's how we know that it was something that was innovated, imitating the non-Arab, non-Muslim peoples. A lot of people, they became Muslim from other lands, and they started to bring these things in, right? And so these things are much different than that. Also, some of the mashayikh, I've heard in different lectures, some of the mashayikh, they dislike, when you have, sometimes they're studying like a mandhuma, right? And you find the person, they usually have one of their students recite for them. And sometimes they'll do it bitaganni, right? صَعِدَ الَّذِينَ تَجَنَّبُوا سُبُلَ الرَّدَى وَتَيَامَمُوا بِمَنَازِلِ الرِّضْوَانِ. Like this, start getting real melodious, and they say, hasbuk. That's enough, some of them, they're not even reciting a mandhuma. They maybe just reading from a book, and they're still doing like this, up and down and low and high and like this. And you hear many of the mashayikh, they say there's no asl for that. And he says, it causes tashwish. Busies the mind of a person and confuses him. It's not any benefit in that. So even with that, to say things in a nice way and then to overdo it, there's a line in between the two, and Allah knows best.